Welcome back, everybody. It's another episode of Pursuit of Profit. I'm your co-host, Chris Angel, here with your hostess, Leanne. Leanne, I always say hostess. Is that okay?
Yes, I love it.
Because I said host one time and you didn't like host, so now we're doing hostess. So hostess Leanne Ozaine-Smith, who is your financial planner and profit coach. So Leanne, today we're starting a series. It's a three-part series on the influencers of financial transformation.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a mouthful, but it's so good.
Yeah. I mean, just unpack that for a minute. Like, what are the influences that really create financial transformation? I can't think of anybody that doesn't want financial transformation.
No, everybody wants
to be transformed financially.
And we're going to talk positive financial transformation, not the other way around.
That's what I love it.
Well, I guess these principles would apply to that too. But there are three things that I think of that actually adapt and influence not just who we are as entrepreneurs, but who we are as people. Like, I think it's pretty foolish to assume that people who have businesses know how to flip the light off and go home, and they're not business owners when they go home. Like, we're all learning that work-life balance. And and actually I heard on a podcast recently that work-life balance is kind of a dead concept. It's actually more like work-life integration. And I think that's pretty true because of how, social platforms and Chris, you froze.
Nope, I'm still here. I got you.
Okay. Should I not say that?
No, you don't have to say that. We're still going. Everybody listening, Leanne didn't just say that. Leanne's still going.
Edit me out. Okay. So I think it's about like work-life integration, not just like keeping them separate. So when I was really thinking about this from a conversation I had with someone this week, it came out like there are things that are influencing us as human beings that influence us as business owners. And what influences us as business owners also comes back and influences our character and what we value and forms us as people. And so those are the things I want to talk about. But of course, we're going to couch it in the context of moolah.
Moolah, money.
Money. So the three influencers that we're going to be discussing in this series, we're only doing one today, are stories that we believe, habits that we develop, and relationships that we cultivate.
So juicy. I can't wait to sink my teeth into those.
I know it's a little bit touchy-feely for me, but that's okay. You're here. You're here.
Right up my alley.
I know.
It's right up my alley.
I know. So,
today is money stories we believe. Yeah.
Money stories narratives or stories that we believe about money. So I think that if we look around us, there are lots of stories that we can look at about money. They're in culture, right? Culture, the narrative about money and culture, there's so many of them. They can be things like, you never have enough, right? Or, that having money is selfish, or having money makes you greedy. Having money makes you somebody like Donald Trump. Or, I don't know. Like, there are tons of narratives that are out there. And so what ends up happening, or what I observe with people when I ask them, like, what did you learn about money without ever being taught anything? I'm not talking about school. Like, what did you learn about money from your parents? Or what did you learn about money from your spouse? And we could have a lot of fun with just that conversation sometime. But a lot of times it's those stories that we see playing out in our lives, and we actually hold on to them and we believe them. And when we have that belief, it adapts our behavior, right? Like, if I believe there is never enough money, that is massively going to adapt or influence my behavior with money. So I see this in my practice, both as a financial planner and definitely when I'm working with business owners on their profit plan.
Right.
So
how do we change that? Where does the transformation come from? Right. Because it's really hard. My experience has been, it's hard to find those subconscious stories that are running my behavior. It's hard. Intellectually, I can hear you say this and I go, oh yeah, I get that. But then to actually to go dig down and find where that subconscious story lives is hard. How does that happen?
Well, the way I do that with people is I ask them, so our audience can ask themselves, what did I learn about money without ever being taught anything? Like, what did I just pick up in my family? And a lot of times people react to that. Like, they go the opposite direction. Like, if somebody's parents used credit cards all the time and they were always poor and there was never enough money or whatever.
Yeah,
They go the opposite direction. So you can look at what your knee-jerk behavior with money is right now to kind of unpack that story. But I actually think the best way to do that is to look at your habits with money. Like, what habits do you have right now? And if you look and go, you know what, and we're going to talk about the adaptations here in a minute, but if you have one of these 3 adaptations I'm going to talk about, then you very likely have a story going through your mind. And also all you have to do is look at the habit and go, oh yeah, I do that. So it probably means I actually believe a narrative about money, whether I picked it up from culture, family, or just experience.
Well, I was just going to say, like, I think sometimes another access point to that is, what do you believe is true about money?
Yeah.
Right? Because here's what I can tell you. Whatever you believe is true is actually a story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Right? Like, you're like, everybody's got a story, and whatever you think is true tends, like money, you have to work hard for money. That is just true. Okay, well, and that's your story about money, right?
Yeah.
But we all have stories, and maybe that story serves you.
Yeah.
Maybe the story serves you, but ultimately what we're trying to talk about here is we're trying to identify, because to every good part of a story, there's another side of the story that might sabotage what it is you're actually trying to do. So you need to look at, what do you really believe is true about money, and then realize that that's the story.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the story, you're a character in the story. So and if it's about your business, you're probably the most important character
right.
in the story. And by the way, you're the biggest influencer of the results, like the outcome of that story. So, I think that's why it's important that we talk about it. There's also stories, like you just said, that we believe that are untrue, right? Like, so this conversation is going to be about the stories I hear the most. And they're funny ones. They're good ones. The stories that I can hear come very clearly from my clients. I'm like, oh, that's why you're stuck. Okay. So if you want to get unstuck, you got to address this issue. And so the only reason we're talking about the story is because the story forms the habit. Yeah. And so what I always want our audience to know is that in my practice, the way that we do things here at Pursuit of Profit, it is not about accounting or being better at managing your money or any of that crapola. We throw that stuff out. We only need that stuff one day a year. Right? That does not inform our business. But what we are going to do is have completely different habits. And it's the habits that I see people when they trust me and they do what they say they're going to do as a result of our coaching, they get new habits, and those habits inform their results. So that's why we have to look at the story and how the story forms the habit.
Got it. So take me through some of that. Like, what are some stories that you hear or habits you see?
We're going to look at 3. The 3 that I hear all the time. So the first one is, it's so good. It's so juicy. It is, I am just no good at money. I am just no good at money. When people say stuff like that to me, I'm like, why do you say that? And I hear things like, because I couldn't balance a checkbook if my life depended on it. Or I wouldn't balance a checkbook if my life depended on it. Or I just, it stresses me out. It makes my teeth itch,
Right. Yeah.
Stuff like that. I am no good at money. So when that's the narrative that is running through your mind and that story that you believe and tell yourself, that creates a habit. And it reinforces something I hear you talk a lot about, which is limiting beliefs, right? That becomes a really big limiting belief. And so the way I see that actually play out, when that story is really true, especially of an entrepreneur, it's less so when I'm doing financial planning, but when it's profit work, that story is going on. What forms the character, informs the behavior of that entrepreneur is an adaptation that they think that it doesn't matter because they're no good at money. They're just going to turn a blind eye to it, like a dog who's like, if I don't look at it, it'll go away. It'll go away. Right. And I only have to look at it when I need to. And this adaptation basically means, hey, I'm out. I'm no good at money. So I don't have to get better at it. I don't have to figure anything. I'm out. What do you think? Are you laughing for a reason?
Yeah. This feels so familiar.
Oh, is this one of your imaginary friends? No, I'm kidding.
It's one of my stories. It's one of my stories.
Oh, I've had it too. I think that's a great point. I'll never forget the day that I took this basically a competency test to become a financial planner. And so I took this test and I passed. Oh, thank goodness. And then I called my mom and I was like, Mom, you won't believe this. Like, I passed this test. Like, I'm actually going to go down this path. And she said to me, why would you do that? Why are you hate math. You hate math. Because my degree's in English, right? Like, I hate math. I don't love math. But I remember saying to her, like, money is so different than math. Money is so different than math. And to this day, I happily work with people's money, and I hate the numbers side of it, like calculating down to the penny and all. I hate that side, but I love the results of saying money is different than math. Right. So I'm a good example of somebody who would say, I'm no good at numbers, and so I'm no good at money. I could see myself saying that. Right. My former self, my self 20 years ago. Yeah. But money is just a skill. Managing money is just a skill. And so if you're that person who has that limiting belief and you're just like, hey, I'm no good at money, instead of saying I'm out, it's someone else's responsibility. I don't know how much money we have for this, and this because my bookkeeper didn't do the books this week, or I lost my bookkeeper, or I just look online to see what my bank balance is. Like, if you're any of those things, that is a habit and a behavior that is absolutely contributing to whether or not you are maximizing your profit. And the chances are it's on the not, the not end of those things. The
silver lining is you probably have a lot of profit that you could be giving yourself a raise right now if you just worked with Leanne, because she'd be like, oh, hey, you got all sorts of places to give yourself a raise.
Absolutely.
You've just been turning a blind eye to it, but
because you're telling yourself you're no good at money. When in reality, you just have to change a few things, and then you'll be really good with money, and you'll be really, really profitable and really happy. Yeah. So that's the first story I hear all the time. Okay. The other one is, I think, sounds like you.
Okay. I'm sure I have multiple stories. Keep going.
Chris is like, how many times are you going to throw me under the bus?
Hit me with this one.
But no, it's not just you, Chris. It's everybody. Yeah. So the story is like, oh, well, if I need more money, I'll just go make more.
Oh yeah. Big time.
I'll just do it. Like, I don't need a plan. Like, whatever. That's stupid. Plans don't work. Goals don't work. I'm not doing that. I'll figure it out. I'll just go make more. Make more. Yep. Which is maybe a good survival mechanism. It's maybe not very profitable.
Yeah. I mean, it shows a determination and a strength of heart.
Yes, absolutely.
But what's the behavior that comes out of that? Like,
the adaptation.
Yeah, the adaptation.
The adaptation, and again, we're defining the adaptation as like, how does that story shape the human and the business owner and that like work-life balance thing. So that story is the adaptation is that person is always, can I say it again? Always.
One more.
Always looking for the new high water mark. They're always chasing their tail. They are playing catch up constantly. And it is no way to live life as a business owner. Like, this is one of the reasons why it took me probably 8 years of practicing and doing this kind of work to realize, like, okay, listen, what my clients really need to know, especially if this is the story going on for them, is that they need to know that they're always going to be okay, and that we have put money in the right place so that they aren't chasing their tail, because this is exhausting. Because what you end up doing when you're like, well, I'll just go make more money, is you go make more money and you also go spend more money. And when you're doing that, you're actually playing catch up instead of actually moving your business forward in a greater profit.
Yeah, you never feel like you get ahead. You always feel like you're always feeling like you're behind. Yes. And the vision, as the vision expands, because this is the hard part about being an entrepreneur, is that the vision always expands. Like, if I get to the next mile marker, I'm like, sweet, now look at the vista, look at how much more I can see. And I'm like, let's go do that. But I have no resources to go do that because I keep chasing my tail, as you say.
Well, I didn't say you specifically. I was saying people that
we've already acknowledged that I'm been thrown under the bus. So I will wear that hat proudly. I will wear it proudly.
Let the audience hear that Leanne loves Chris and picks on him mercilessly. If they haven't picked up on it, surely we should just tell them by now that we couldn't possibly have more of a brother-sister relationship.
Yeah.
Than anybody I've ever met, right?
Yeah, of course.
So of course I'm gonna dog on you. Yeah,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay. So
hit me with the third one.
Third one. Yep. And then we'll wrap. This one's my favorite, and it's the one that I hear the most. And it's basically this story of, well, Leanne, investing into my business, back into my business, is just always the right decision. It's always wise. And I'm like, nope, not true. So when somebody
I get it. Yeah, it just popped for me. I get it because I do that too.
So do I. I mean, I have some of these
because at first I heard the story is like, no, that's true. It's good. Of course it's right to reinvest in your business. What are you talking about? And then I remembered our conversation from our plan. And I'm like, oh, I know what you mean now. Right.
Right.
So what's the adaptation? Because I totally relate to that. What's the adaptation on that one?
Oh, this one's super juicy. Oh, I'm almost embarrassed to say it because it's, yeah. So basically the adaptation is that person is always chasing opportunity. Like they inherently believe in the unlimited potential of their business. Yep. They really believe it. Right. And so when the real dollars aren't in the bank account or the real profit isn't there or whatever is the real reality of their financial situation, the way they get beyond that and still go to work, which is a survival mechanism, and it's a good thing, but they just put their belief in that opportunity, and that's where they continue to invest. Right. And so they are always chasing that opportunity, and they are having, as a rule, I would say, kind of turning a blind eye, like, don't mess, let's say stuff to me like, don't mess with that. Like, I have to have that. I'll give you an example. There is a client of mine who has, I think, a $500,000 business. About what he's bringing in, 2 staff members, and his wife works in the business with him. And we start doing profit plan, and he is so excited telling me about his practice and what he does, and he's selling me on it. And I get into the numbers and I get into where money's going, and he has not 1, not 2, but 3 different coaches. And I'm the 4th, right? But I'm a short-term coach. I come in, we put the plan together, I get out, right? Like, I'm not trying to be around for a year. So this guy had 3 coaches. And I asked him to explain to me, like, okay, well, I totally believe in coaches. I am one, but how do we know that we're getting return on investment? And he was the perfect example, because he's like, oh my word, like, don't touch that. I need those people so that I can be great in my business, so that my business can grow, so that I can do this, so that I can do that. And, like, this person has told me this, and this whole story came out, and the whole story was, I'm going to reinvest back in my business, and I'm dependent on these people. The long and the short of it is, when we actually got down to the nitty gritty about what he was getting out of those relationships and how that was either growing his business or not, all 3 of them got fired, right? But if he hadn't had that conversation with me, where I was being objective, he would have kept all 3 of those people, because he just believed in the unlimited opportunity of his business and what these people could bring to the table for him. And he didn't believe he could do it without. Instead, we fired them and we put that money in his pocket. It becomes a no-brainer. So this one, investing back into my business is always wise, it's like, I don't know where it comes from, but I just think it's that thought that I must spend every dollar that I make in my business on my business in order to keep it stable, or in order to grow it, or whatever. And there's no plan, and there's no accountability. And so that becomes an exhausting habit, and it becomes quite profitless quite quickly.
Yeah, big time. No, I've been there and done that. Big time. I think part of it is like, investing in the vision in your head. Like as an entrepreneur, I want it so bad. And depending on how long you've been in business, like I've been in business 17 years. So the longer you're in it, the more you want it. And if you haven't had it because the vision keeps expanding, the more desperate you get to get it. And so you're like, I will try that and I will try that. I said to you the other day, I'm willing to burn it all to the ground in order to figure it out. Like, and I think at some level you go, all these different opportunities, as you say, start to occur as potential solutions. You're like, well, maybe that's
saviors.
And maybe that's yeah, right. That's okay. That's probably more accurate. Like we're like, oh, maybe that will save the day. Maybe that will save the day. So I think that's why I do it. That's why I've done it. Absolutely.
And it like that belief forms a habit, which we'll talk about in the next episode.
Got it.
And these things, all three of these are the most common ones I hear as a profit coach. There are more, but when we do the next episode talking about habits, I think that our listeners will actually self-discover what their story is, that they're believing. But the point is, we're looking for financial transformation. Right? Yeah. And so financial transformation means we have to really look at what we have as far as ingredients. And one of those ingredients is the story that we tell ourselves, and we let change and shape our character as a human being.
That's a good wrap up, Leanne. Wow. That was masterful. You just pulled out all together with a bow. That was beautiful. Yeah, it was so good. Well, that's super juicy. I can't wait for the next conversation because I got thrown under the bus 3 times in this episode. Because all 3 fit me like a glove.
On one of these episodes.
All 3 fit me like a glove. It's all good. So if people want to reach out to you because they're like, hey, listen, I really do want some transformation. You sound like you might be able to help me. Where can people go to connect with you?
ProfitDiscoveryCall.com.
Perfect.
And they can schedule a 40-minute conversation with me, and we'll just talk about what's going on in their business and what transformation they're hoping for. Yeah. And we'll get to the bottom of it.
Yeah. So you're so good at what you do. I love it. So
Thank
you guys would be foolish. You guys would be insane.
Come on,
people. To not have a conversation with Leanne, because Leanne, you really are good at what you do. So thank you for the contribution you've made in my life, in my financial profit areas. And I hope the same for you guys listening to this. So Leanne, I'll catch you next time. Thanks for a great episode.
Thanks, Chris. Bye.